It was supposed to be just another night, cold rain against the glass, a lonely penthouse, and the familiar hum of success that no longer felt like victory. Eleanor Reeves, the youngest CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, stood before her reflection, trying to find something human behind the perfect armor she wore every day. Her phone buzzed with another reminder: annual charity gala, bring a date. The irony was cruel. She could command boardrooms, close million-dollar deals, and silence critics with a single look. But when it came to her own life, to love, or even companionship, she had no one. Before we dive into this story of second chances, quiet courage, and the magic of unexpected connections, please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, love after heartbreak, and the power of new beginnings. The night before the gala, her kitchen sink burst, a ridiculous, mundane inconvenience for a woman who lived her life in control. Frustrated and exhausted, Eleanor had called the first repair service she found online. An hour later, a man appeared at her door. He was soaked from the rain, a few strands of dark hair falling across his forehead, carrying a worn-out toolbox that had clearly seen better days. His name was Jack Carter. He introduced himself softly, his voice low but warm, the kind that felt like safety before you even realized you needed it. Eleanor barely looked at him. She was buried in her laptop, responding to emails while he crouched near the sink. But she couldn't ignore the way he hummed under his breath while working, or how gently he spoke to someone over the phone. It turned out to be his daughter, Lily. There was something tender in his tone, a quiet patience that caught her off guard. He wasn't rushing to impress. He wasn't watching her like most men did. He was simply present. When he finished, Eleanor thanked him curtly and handed him his payment. But when their eyes met, she noticed the faint exhaustion there, the kind that doesn't come from work alone, it comes from carrying too much for too long. He smiled politely, said goodnight, and left. She thought that was the end of it, but fate, as it often does, had other plans. The next morning, Eleanor's assistant called in sick, and her scheduled date for the gala, a polished investor's son, had cancelled last minute. The press would be there, her shareholders too, and the last thing she needed was another tabloid headline about the Ice Queen CEO showing up alone again. Desperation can make even the most rational mind think irrationally. And so, on a reckless impulse, she called the only person she could think of who wasn't from her world, who wouldn't ask for anything in return, the single dad who had fixed her sink. Jack was stunned. He'd never been to a gala in his life, didn't even own a proper suit. But there was something in Eleanor's voice, a mixture of pride and vulnerability, that made it impossible to say no. He agreed, mostly because his daughter had told him the night before that he needed to do something fun for once. That evening, when he showed up outside her penthouse wearing a borrowed suit, Eleanor froze. He didn't look like the man who had crouched under her sink last night. He looked remarkable. Nervous, yes, but genuine. His tie was slightly crooked, and his shoes weren't polished to perfection, yet there was something about him that felt more real than anyone she had met in years. At the gala, heads turned. Cameras flashed. The powerful CEO who never smiled was suddenly laughing, really laughing, at something her date said. Jack, unbothered by the suits and diamonds surrounding them, treated everyone with the same kindness. He held doors open, listened when people spoke, and made Eleanor feel human again, but behind the glitter and the smiles, something deeper stirred. Jack noticed the way Eleanor's eyes hardened whenever someone mentioned her company. He saw how her hands trembled slightly when her father's name came up, the man who had built the empire she now ran, but never once told her he was proud. She noticed how he would check his phone now and then, his wallpaper a little girl with a missing front tooth. When she asked, he spoke about Lily, the light of his life, his reason to keep going after his wife passed away 3 years ago. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, yet for one night, they fit perfectly. Two people pretending for others but finding truth in each other. When the night ended, Eleanor didn't want to say goodbye. She invited him upstairs for coffee, under the excuse of returning his borrowed cufflinks. They talked until dawn about grief, dreams, the weight of expectations, and what it felt like to be seen. Jack admitted he'd lost himself after his wife's death, pouring everything into being both mother and father. Eleanor confessed that success had become her prison. She was surrounded by people, yet she'd never felt lonelier. As morning light touched the city skyline, silence hung between them, heavy but comforting. For the first time in years, Eleanor didn't feel like a CEO. She felt like a woman, simply trying to find her place in the world. Over the next few weeks, something unspoken began to grow. Jack would stop by sometimes to fix something small she didn't really need fixed. Eleanor would pretend not to notice the way her heart softened around him. He brought laughter into her sterile home, and she brought warmth back into his tired life. Lily adored her, drawing pictures of Miss Ellie with hearts around them, but the world is never kind to love that doesn't follow its rules. When photos of Eleanor and Jack appeared in tabloids, the internet exploded. CEO and handyman romance? From boardroom to basement? Investors questioned her judgment. Board members whispered about image and reputation. Eleanor was called reckless, unprofessional. Her carefully built empire began to wobble under the weight of gossip. Jack, feeling responsible, tried to disappear quietly. He sent her a message: you deserve someone who fits into your world. Someone who won't make people question you. It broke her heart in ways she couldn't explain. For days, she couldn't focus. The woman who had built everything from scratch suddenly felt empty again, but then, something inside her snapped. She showed up at his little apartment on the outskirts of the city. The door was slightly open, and she heard Lily's laughter from inside. Jack stood frozen when he saw her. Eleanor, usually so composed, looked on the verge of tears. She told him she was tired of pretending, tired of living for other people's opinions. She said she didn't care if the world saw her as foolish, because for the first time, she'd found something real. Jack didn't know what to say. So he didn't. He simply stepped closer and took her trembling hand in his. From then on, they decided to face the world together. The journey wasn't easy. Some investors pulled out. Her PR team panicked. But gradually, something beautiful happened. People saw her differently. Not as the untouchable CEO, but as someone human. Someone brave enough to love without apology. And Jack, through her belief in him, found his confidence again. He opened his own small business, a repair company that grew through word of mouth, built on honesty and compassion. Months later, at another charity gala, Eleanor walked in once again with Jack by her side. Cameras flashed again, but this time, she smiled without fear. And when reporters asked if he was still her fake date, she laughed softly and said, "No. He's the man who fixed more than my sink, he fixed my heart." The crowd went silent, and for a brief moment, even the cold glitter of high society felt warm. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive in the grand gestures or perfect plans. It finds you in the most ordinary moments, in a broken sink, a kind smile, a borrowed suit. It teaches you that strength isn't about never falling apart, it's about letting someone see you when you do, and trusting that they'll stay.